Massive stone walls hold more secrets than we can imagine. Deep within European castles lie rooms whose doors have not been opened for centuries. What lies beyond these declarations? Why were some spaces deliberately isolated from the world? These questions stir the imagination of everyone who has ever touched the cold walls of ancient fortresses. Sealed rooms are not just an architectural feature, but a true phenomenon that connects history, psychology, and the mysteries of human nature. Medieval masters created these spaces with a specific purpose: to hide what should not be found. Sometimes these were places of confinement for the undesirable, sometimes repositories of forbidden knowledge or treasures. In some cases, rooms were sealed after terrible events, as if trying to forever bury the memory of them. The human mind reacts especially acutely to the forbidden, to what is hidden from view. Perhaps that is why legends of locked rooms continue to live on, acquiring new details. But where does fiction end and historical truth begin? What do these silent witnesses of the past truly hide? Secret rooms in European castles were not an accidental architectural whim. Their appearance was dictated by the harsh, historical necessity of an era when power constantly balanced on the brink of collapse, and a ruler's life could end at any moment. The Middle Ages and the Renaissance were times when political intrigue was valued no less than military might. In such an atmosphere, castles became not just fortifications, but complex systems of control and manipulation. Secret rooms were a tool of power, as important as an army or gold in the treasury. For monarchs and aristocrats of the 14th and 15th centuries, security was an obsession. Hidden rooms offered the opportunity to eavesdrop on conversations of guests and advisors, store compromising documents, or hide in case of rebellion. Leeds Castle in England had an entire system of rooms that allowed the royal family to move unnoticed between floors, bypassing the main halls full of potential conspirators. Secret spaces played a special role during the era of religious wars. During the Reformation in England, Catholic families arranged so-called priest holes in their homes and castles, tiny rooms where persecuted Catholic priests could hide. Such double-walled rooms were discovered in Harlaxton Castle, where a person could hide for days while Protestant authorities searched the house. Many secret rooms were created for storing forbidden knowledge. In an era when science often bordered on heresy, alchemical laboratories and astrological cabinets were hidden behind false walls and secret doors. A secret library was discovered in Heidelberg Castle, with texts that could cost their owner their life if found by the Inquisition. An equally important function of hidden rooms was the demonstration of power through fear. Rumors of mysterious locked doors, behind which people disappeared, worked more effectively than any public execution. The castle became a physical embodiment of the ruler's power, incomprehensible, pervasive, and potentially deadly. In Château de Chambord, there were rooms that all courtiers knew about, but no one knew exactly where they were, an ideal tool for maintaining an atmosphere of paranoia and submission. The architecture of castles also reflected the social hierarchy of society. Secret passages allowed servants to move invisibly to their masters, creating the illusion that the aristocracy served itself. In Blenheim Palace, the system of corridors for servants was designed so artfully that guests could spend weeks in the castle without encountering a single servant outside the dining hall. With the development of artillery in the 15th and 16th centuries, a new reason to create hidden spaces emerged: protection from bombardments. Secret rooms with reinforced vaults began to appear within castle walls, where important documents and valuables were stored. These rooms were often disguised as ordinary storerooms or completely hidden behind false walls. Some of these rooms were so well disguised that they were only discovered by chance centuries later, after the castle had already changed several generations of owners. The architectural genius of the Middle Ages manifested itself not only in majestic facades and towers reaching for the sky, but also in the art of concealment. The creation of invisible spaces was a true science, requiring deep knowledge of geometry, mechanics, and the psychology of perception. Castle builders developed a whole arsenal of techniques that allowed entire rooms to be made invisible to the uninitiated. The simplest and oldest method of camouflage was the false stone. In stonemasonry, some blocks could rotate around their axis, opening a narrow passage into a hidden chamber. In Château Gaillard in France, such rotating stones were so skillfully fitted to the surrounding masonry that they could only be noticed by knowing their exact location. A more complex solution was doors disguised as interior elements. In Praley Castle, wooden panels covering the walls of the main hall concealed several secret doors leading to a system of corridors between the walls. The hinges of these doors were hidden, and the opening mechanisms were activated by pressing certain carved elements. 13th century masters went further, creating mechanical systems with counterweights and levers. In some Bavarian castles, secret doors were discovered that opened only when several points located in different parts of the room were pressed simultaneously. The Renaissance brought a new level of complexity. Architects began to use the principles of optical illusion, creating corridors with false perspective, masking the real dimensions of rooms. In Amboise Castle, a corridor was created that appeared to be a dead end, but from a certain viewing angle, it opened a passage to a secret room. Acoustics played an important role in the creation of invisible spaces. Builders deliberately designed rooms so that sounds from secret rooms were absorbed by special air pockets in the walls. In some cases, even sound traps were created, corridors where the acoustic properties of the stone distorted the sound of footsteps, creating the illusion that a person was moving in the opposite direction. Special skill was required to create rooms without a visible entrance. Such rooms were usually located between floors or within the thickness of the outer walls. Access to them was through movable elements of the floor or ceiling in adjacent rooms. In Guidelstein Castle, a room was discovered, the only entrance to which was a fireplace in the library on the floor below. Its back wall moved aside, revealing a staircase upwards. With the development of engineering, more complex systems appeared. In the 16th century, some Italian castles already used hydraulic mechanisms to open heavy secret doors. In Sforza Castle, a system was created where turning a certain tap in the kitchen changed the water pressure in the pipes, activating a hidden mechanism in another part of the castle. False rooms deserve special attention. Spaces created solely to divert attention from real secret spaces. In some castles, obvious secret rooms were built which any sufficiently attentive visitor could find. Their purpose was simple: to satisfy the curiosity of the seeker and to distract them from searching for real secrets. The evolution of concealment methods reached its peak in the 17th century, when the achievements of watchmakers penetrated architecture. Doors with clockwork mechanisms appeared, opening only at a certain time of day, and rooms, access to which became possible only when the sun was in a certain position, when light through a special window activated a hidden mechanism. Château de Chambord rises amidst the forests of the Loire Valley as a majestic symbol of the French Renaissance. However, behind its elegant facade lies a labyrinth of architectural enigmas that challenge modern understanding. The most famous of these is the celebrated double helix staircase, attributed to the genius of Leonardo da Vinci. Two spiral staircases intertwine around a single axis, allowing people to ascend and descend without ever meeting. But why create such a complex structure in the heart of the castle? Historians suggest that it was not merely an architectural caprice, but a carefully conceived element of a system of secret movements. The staircase could have allowed the king and his trusted confidants to discreetly observe guests, creating an illusion of omnipresent power. Even stranger are the so-called rooms without entry, enclosed spaces discovered between the walls of Chambord during modern thermographic surveys. These rooms have no doors or visible passages, raising the question: were they originally conceived as isolated spaces, or were their entrances subsequently walled up? One of the most intriguing theories connects these rooms to acoustic experiments. The arrangement of some enclosed spaces creates unusual sound effects in adjacent all. A whisper in one corner is distinctly audible at the opposite end of the room. Perhaps these resonator rooms were part of a sophisticated eavesdropping system, allowing the king to control conversations among courtiers. No less mysterious are the staircases to nowhere, stone steps that abruptly end at blind walls. Investigations of the castle using ground-penetrating radar have revealed cavities behind some of these walls, suggesting the existence of walled-up rooms. Historians hypothesize that these spaces might have been used to store compromising documents or valuables, and were then deliberately isolated during changes of ownership or political regimes. Leonardo da Vinci's influence on Chambord's architecture remains a subject of debate. While there is no direct evidence of his involvement in the castle's design, many structural elements remarkably resemble drawings from his famous notebooks. Particularly indicative is the ventilation system, hidden within the thick walls, a technological solution that was centuries ahead of its time. In some closed rooms of the castle, strange symbols carved into the stone blocks have been discovered. These signs resemble encrypted entries in Leonardo's diaries, reinforcing the theory of his involvement in the project. Perhaps the Renaissance genius created a unique architectural puzzle in Chambord, which can only be solved by possessing the key to his ciphers. Modern studies, using computer modeling, have revealed another feature of the castle. Its layout forms hidden geometric figures, visible only from above. The central part of the castle forms a perfect cross inscribed within a square, which may indicate an esoteric subtext of the project. Such geometry is characteristic of temple architecture and is rarely found in secular buildings of that era. On the border of Switzerland and France, where the waters of Lake Geneva lap against ancient walls, rises one of Europe's most enigmatic structures, Chillon Castle. Its massive silhouette, reflected in the crystal-clear waters, conceals a grim system of underground and underwater chambers, which for centuries served as the final resting place for many prisoners. Chillon Castle was built in the 11th century on a small rocky island connected to the shore by a narrow bridge. This location made it an ideal prison. Escaping from here was practically impossible. A unique feature of the fortress is that part of its dungeons lies below the lake level, creating a system of underwater chambers where humidity and cold became an additional punishment for the incarcerated. The most famous of these chambers is the one where François Bonivard, known as the Prisoner of Chillon, was held. This Swiss patriot and opponent of the House of Savoy spent 6 years in captivity, chained to one of the 7 pillars of the underground hall. Lord Byron, who visited this dungeon in 1816, was so moved by what he saw that he wrote his famous poem, quote, immortalizing Bonivard's suffering. archaeological investigations have confirmed the existence of a special system of chambers that were previously only legendary. In the eastern wing of the castle, rooms were discovered which could only be accessed through hatches in the floor of the upper levels. When these hatches were closed, prisoners found themselves in completely isolated spaces without doors or windows, effectively walled up alive. Particular horror was evoked by the so-called tide chambers. Located in the lowest levels of the fortress, these rooms would partially fill with water during storms on the lake. Prisoners, chained to the walls, could watch as the water slowly rose, never knowing if it would stop or continue to rise to the ceiling. Recent underwater explorations have revealed a system of tunnels leading from the castle's underwater foundation into the depths of the lake. For a long time, it was believed that these were merely drainage channels, but the discovered iron grates and remnants of chains lead historians to assume a more sinister purpose. According to one theory, these tunnels were used for the secret disposal of the bodies of prisoners who died in captivity. In the 21st century, restorers discovered a walled-up door in the northern wall of the dungeon. When the passage was opened, it revealed a small chamber with inscriptions carved into the walls, the last testimonies of people who forever disappeared from historical chronicles. Analysis of these texts allowed for the identification of several political opponents of the Savoyard dukes who were considered missing. Engineering analysis of Chillon's construction revealed the deliberate design of its prison architecture. The thickness of the walls between chambers was calculated so that prisoners could not communicate with each other, enhancing the effect of isolation. The acoustic properties of the dungeons created a sound distortion effect. Cries for help turned into inarticulate echoes, and the sound of lake waves amplified into a roar, slowly eroding the sanity of the prisoners. The ancient walls of Edinburgh Castle, towering over the Scottish capital, hold the dark secrets of an underworld. While tourists admire the majestic halls and panoramic views, beneath their feet lies a real network of tunnels and chambers, many of which remain sealed to this day. This underground system is so vast that locals say there's an entire ghost city hidden beneath the hill, concealed from visitors' eyes. In the 17th century, Edinburgh endured several waves of plague that devastated the city. According to contemporary accounts, authorities took radical measures to contain the epidemic. One of the most terrifying decisions was to seal off entire streets along with their infected residents. Special quarantine facilities were set up under Edinburgh Castle, where sick people from the upper classes were brought. When the situation spiraled out of control, these rooms were simply bricked up, turning them into mass graves. The story of the so-called quote evokes particular horror. This small underground chamber was discovered accidentally in 1967 during renovation work. When workers broke through a bricked-up passage, they found a room with 12 stone niches along the walls. Remains of chains were preserved in each niche. Historians suggest that patients with particularly contagious forms of plague were kept here, chained to the walls to prevent contact with one another. The acoustic properties of this room astound researchers. Due to the unique geometry of the space, even the quietest whisper in one corner is clearly audible in all other parts of the room. This created a special form of psychological torture. The dying were forced to listen to each other's groans and delirium, unable to find solitude even in their own thoughts. Even more mysterious is the system of tunnels leading from the castle towards the Royal Mile. Some of these passages have been explored, but many remain sealed. According to urban legend, in the 18th century, a group of musicians decided to explore one of the tunnels. They entered the underground playing bagpipes so that those above could track their progress by sound. The music abruptly stopped when the group reached a certain point. None of the musicians returned, and subsequent search parties could not even find their traces. Modern research using ground-penetrating radar has revealed the presence of several large cavities beneath the central part of the castle. Of particular interest is a chamber located directly beneath the Great Hall. It matches the size of the hall above, but has no visible entrances or exits. Experts suggest it could have been a secret refuge in case of a siege or a repository for royal treasures. In recent decades, Edinburgh Castle has become a center for paranormal investigations. Numerous visitors and staff report inexplicable phenomena, especially in the vicinity of the sealed chambers. The most frequent testimonies concern sounds emanating from behind the bricked-up walls, groans, weeping, and strange music. Several guards independently described a feeling of presence in empty corridors and sharp temperature drops near sealed doors. High in the Carpathian Mountains, on the border of Transylvania, rises a silhouette that has become a symbol of medieval horror: Bran Castle. Although its connection to the historical Vlad the Impaler remains a subject of debate among historians, the architectural features of this and other fortresses attributed to Dracula demonstrate how space could be used not only for defense, but also for psychological intimidation. Bran Castle, built in the 14th century, is a unique example of fortification architecture, where every element of its design served a dual purpose: defensive and psychological. Narrow corridors with low ceilings created a sense of claustrophobia, making visitors feel vulnerable. Sudden dead ends and corridors that abruptly changed direction disoriented uninvited guests, intensifying their feeling of helplessness. Of particular note are the castle's torture chambers, located in its lower levels. Unlike most medieval fortresses, where such rooms were usually hidden in dungeons, in castles associated with Vlad the Impaler, they were positioned so that the groans of prisoners could be heard in the grand halls. This was a deliberate architectural technique, turning suffering into a tool for demonstrating power. The system of secret passages within Bran Castle's walls allowed guards to suddenly appear in any room, creating the illusion of the ruler's omnipresent authority. Historians have discovered that some of these passages were designed with acoustic properties in mind. They amplified and distorted the sounds of footsteps, creating the impression that not one person, but an entire group was moving through the corridors. The most sinister elements of the castle's architecture are the isolated rooms, chambers without windows, with a single entrance through a trapdoor in the ceiling. In such cells, the prisoner was completely dependent on the jailer even for basic needs like light and air. Archaeological research has shown that the walls of these rooms were covered with a special sound-absorbing compound. The cries of the prisoners could not be heard from outside. Another fortress associated with Vlad the Impaler, Ponari Castle, demonstrates an even more sophisticated approach to intimidation architecture. Located atop an impregnable rock, this castle was visible from afar, serving as a constant reminder of the ruler's power. A unique feature of Ponari was the so-called, quote, zero, small chambers before the audience hall where visitors could wait for hours to be received. These rooms were designed to amplify a sense of anxiety. Uneven floors creating a feeling of instability, walls slightly sloped inward, inducing subconscious discomfort. Separating historical truth from fiction in stories about the secret rooms of these castles presents significant difficulty. Bram Stoker's literary image of Dracula has influenced the perception of real historical sites. For example, it was long believed that Bran Castle had a room with a mechanism that could drop the floor beneath a visitor, sending them into an underground dungeon. Archaeological research has not confirmed the existence of such a device, but has revealed that some floorboards were intentionally made to creak, a simple but effective way to warn of uninvited guests. Interestingly, many architectural elements attributed to Vlad the Impaler's sadistic tendencies actually had practical defensive significance. For instance, narrow spiral staircases with uneven steps were designed not to cause discomfort to guests, but to slow down advancing attackers and give an advantage to defenders who were familiar with the specific design. Modern research using 3D scanning technologies has revealed several previously unknown rooms in Bran Castle. These small rooms, located between the main floors, have no obvious functional purpose. One theory suggests that they might have been used as secret observation posts, allowing discreet monitoring of events in the castle's main halls. Deep within Europe's ancient castles lay hidden not only dungeons and secret passages, but also special chambers intended for contact with the invisible world. These rooms, designed with complex astrological and geometric principles in mind, became a bridge between the material and the spiritual. Their architecture embodied esoteric knowledge that the castle owners sought to conceal from uninitiated eyes. Alchemical laboratories were perhaps the most common type of such spaces. They were usually located in the northern wing of castles, far from prying eyes, and often in towers closer to the heavens. In Heidelberg Castle, such a laboratory has survived to this day, hidden behind a revolving bookshelf in the library. Its ceiling is adorned with astrological symbols, and the floor is laid with a mosaic depicting the process of transforming base metals into gold. A distinctive feature of alchemical laboratories was their well-thought-out ventilation system. Experiments with mercury and other toxic substances required special architectural solutions. In some castles, complex air ducts were created, hidden within the thick walls. These channels were often disguised as decorative elements. Gargoyles on the exterior walls actually served as outlets for poisonous vapors. Astrological cabinets represented even more mysterious spaces. In Český Krumlov Castle, a circular room has been preserved, whose windows are positioned in such a way that on certain days of the year, sunbeams form a map of the starry sky on the floor. Researchers discovered that the arrangement of the light openings corresponds to the positions of the planets at the time of the castle owner's birth. The geometry of these rooms was never accidental. Pentagrams, hexagrams, and other sacred figures often determined the shape of the rooms and the placement of windows, doors, and furniture. In Kreuzenstein Castle in Austria, an octagonal room was discovered whose proportions precisely correspond to the principles of sacred geometry. Yet, the room visually appears rectangular, an optical illusion created with the help of a special arrangement of furniture and wall panels. Many ritual spaces were designed with acoustic properties in mind. In some castles, there were rooms where certain sound frequencies were amplified, while others were completely absorbed. Such rooms were used for meditations and rituals requiring a special state of consciousness. Glamis Castle in Scotland has a room known as the Whispering Gallery, where even the quietest sound creates a special resonance, inducing an altered state of perception in those present. Interestingly, many of these rooms were located at the intersection of Earth's geomagnetic lines. Modern research has shown that magnetic field anomalies are often observed in the locations of ritual rooms. In Montségur Castle, the last stronghold of the Cathars, a ritual room was built precisely over a geological fault, creating a powerful energy anomaly. Symbolism in the design of such rooms played a key role. Walls were often covered with frescoes featuring alchemical and astrological symbols, which themselves were encrypted texts. In Malbork Castle in Poland, restorers discovered hidden images beneath a layer of ordinary plaster, visible only under certain lighting or in the reflection of special mirrors. The connection between architecture and the esoteric beliefs of the builders was also evident in more subtle details. For example, in some castles, the number of steps between floors corresponded to significant numbers in numerology. In Karlstein Castle in the Czech Republic, the staircase leading to the Chapel of the Holy Cross has 33 steps, corresponding to the number of years of Christ's earthly life. Of particular interest are the so-called transformation rooms, spaces that could completely change their appearance using hidden mechanisms. In Chenonceau Castle, there was a room where, by turning a special lever, the arrangement of the walls changed, transforming an ordinary study into a ritual space with an altar and special lighting. Some ritual rooms were designed to create optical illusions. Peles Castle in Romania has a room with mirrored panels arranged at special angles. When certain candles are lit, an effect of infinite space filled with light is created, a visual embodiment of the alchemical concept of infinite light. In the modern world, these ancient spaces continue to guard their secrets. Many of them remain sealed or accessible only to researchers. Studying these rooms allows us to glimpse the worldview of people from the past, for whom the boundary between science, magic, and religion was much more blurred than it is for us today. Rising above the Elbe Valley, the Saxon fortress of Königstein represents one of the most perfect applications of military architecture in Europe. This impregnable citadel, whose walls remember more than 8 centuries of history, conceals within its structure a multitude of architectural traps and deceptions, created not for beauty, but for deadly effectiveness. Unlike the romantic castles of the Loire Valley or the mystical fortresses of Transylvania, Königstein was primarily a military object, where every architectural element served the purpose of defending or destroying the enemy. Among the most sophisticated elements of the fortress are a system of false rooms, located at strategic defense points. These premises, at first glance indistinguishable from ordinary guard posts or storage rooms, contained a deadly danger for uninvited guests. In the eastern wing of the fortress, archaeologists discovered a room with a double floor. The upper layer, made of thin wooden planks, was skillfully disguised as ordinary flooring. However, under a certain load, for example, when a group of armed men entered the room, the floor would collapse, and the uninvited guests would find themselves in a pit about 5 meters deep with sharpened stakes at the bottom. Particularly noteworthy are the so-called whispering rooms, small rooms with unique acoustic properties. Thanks to the special shape of the ceiling and walls, even the quietest conversation in such rooms was clearly audible in the adjacent room, where garrison officers usually were. This allowed for the identification of spies and traitors who might have infiltrated the fortress under the guise of allies. The western bastion of the fortress contains a system of false corridors created specifically to disorient the enemy. In the event of a breach of the outer defenses, invaders would enter a labyrinth of identical passages, many of which led to dead ends or deadly traps. Some corridors were designed in such a way that attackers inevitably found themselves under crossfire from defenders hidden in special niches in the walls. One of Königstein's most sophisticated military stratagems was rooms with controlled microclimates. In the fortress's basements, engineers created a system of ventilation ducts that allowed certain rooms to be filled with smoke if necessary. These rooms, externally indistinguishable from ordinary barracks or warehouses, became deadly traps for invaders who found themselves blinded and disoriented in unfamiliar space. Over time, the functions of many of these rooms changed. What served as a deadly trap in the 16th century could become a wine cellar or a pantry in the 18th. Particularly interesting is the evolution of the so-called interrogation room. Originally, this room, located in the northern tower, was used to extract information from prisoners. Its special acoustics allowed investigators in the adjacent room to hear even the whispers of the interrogated. In the 18th century, when the fortress began to be used as a state prison, this same room was converted into a cell for particularly important political prisoners. And by the 19th century, when the military significance of the fortress diminished, the same room became part of the officers' mess hall, thanks to its acoustic properties, which allowed music to sound particularly expressive. In the very heart of the Romanian Carpathians, like a precious gem nestled in the emerald setting of the forests, rises Peleș Castle, one of the youngest, yet no less enigmatic structures on our journey through Europe's secret rooms. Built at the end of the 19th century by order of King Carol I, this castle represents a unique symbiosis of medieval romance and the advanced technologies of its time. Unlike ancient fortresses where secret spaces were created using primitive methods, Peleș showcases the engineering art of the industrial age in creating hidden sanctuaries and concealed corridors. King Carol, a scion of the Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen dynasty, brought German thoroughness and a love for technical innovations to the architecture of his residence. Beneath the neo-Renaissance facade lies a true masterpiece of engineering thought, a system of hidden passages connecting the royal apartments to the outside world. Particularly noteworthy is the secret tunnel leading from the royal bedroom to the stables. This passage, hidden behind a massive tapestry, allowed the monarch to discreetly leave the castle in case of danger. Modern research has shown that the tunnel was equipped with a primitive ventilation system and electric lighting, an unprecedented luxury for a hidden passage of that era. A central element of the castle's hidden infrastructure was a system of secret studies located between the main rooms. These small rooms, disguised as wall cabinets or decorative niches, served the king for confidential meetings and storing secret documents. One such room, discovered behind a rotating bookshelf in the library, was equipped with an acoustic system that allowed one to hear all conversations in the main hall. The political motives for creating such a complex system of secret spaces become clear when one recalls the difficult position of Carol I. As a foreigner on the Romanian throne, he constantly faced threats of conspiracies and rebellions. Hidden rooms and secret passages gave the king not only physical protection, but also a psychological advantage: the ability to control the situation while remaining invisible. Of particular interest is the king's secret study, located behind a rotating wall in his official office. This small, windowless room was equipped with Romania's first telephone line, connecting the king directly to government institutions in Bucharest. Here, too, was a safe with secret ciphers and codes for diplomatic correspondence. The technological innovations in creating the hidden spaces of Peleș Castle are striking in their ingenuity. In an era when electricity was just coming into common use, King Carol equipped his secret rooms with electric access control systems. Hidden doors opened with concealed buttons disguised as decorative furniture elements. In the royal bedroom, an alarm system was installed. When the panic button was activated, a signal was sent to the guard rooms via electric wires hidden in the walls. In addition to political considerations, the creation of hidden spaces in Peleș Castle was also dictated by the king's personal motives. As a passionate collector, Carol I amassed an impressive collection of weapons, paintings, and sculptures, many of which were stored in specially equipped secret vaults. Particularly noteworthy is the hidden vault beneath the music salon, where the king kept the most valuable exhibits of his collection. Access to this room was gained through a hidden trapdoor in the floor, concealed by a heavy Persian rug. Queen Elizabeth, Carol's consort, also had her secrets in the castle's architecture. Behind her official bedroom lay a small, windowless room where, according to contemporary accounts, she spent time meditating and writing poetry under the pseudonym Carmen Silva. This room was connected to the king's chambers by a hidden corridor, the existence of which was known only to the most trusted servants. The architecture of castles is not merely stone and wood. It is a language through which fear speaks to us. Why does a locked door evoke such an irrational dread within us? Why does the unknown, hidden behind thick walls, give rise to legends of ghosts and curses? The human mind, when confronted with a closed space, begins to create its own reality, populating it with the darkest images from the depths of the subconscious. Psychologists call this phenomenon architectural anxiety, a state where the space itself becomes a source of fear. Enclosed, windowless rooms evoke a primitive, almost animal fear in humans, rooted in prehistoric times when our ancestors feared caves and other confined spaces where predators might lurk. Medieval architects intuitively understood this mechanism and skillfully utilized it in castle design. Narrow corridors, sharp turns, sudden dead ends – all these elements were created not only for defensive purposes but also for psychological impact on uninvited guests. Studies show that even modern humans, when entering such spaces, experience an increased heart rate, elevated stress levels, and the activation of ancient brain regions responsible for survival. Of particular interest is the phenomenon of the forbidden door, a psychological effect where a locked room evokes an irresistible desire to know what lies behind it. This effect was known even in antiquity. Recall the myth of Pandora's box or Bluebeard's chamber. The human mind abhors gaps and mysteries, striving to fill them with its own fantasies, which often prove to be far more terrifying than reality. The acoustic properties of old castles amplified these fears. Thick walls created strange sound effects, echoes, resonance, sound distortion. Footsteps in a distant corridor could sound like the tread of a giant, and a whisper could transform into an otherworldly moan. In some castles, there were so-called whispering galleries, rooms with special acoustics where even a quiet conversation could be heard at a significant distance. To the uninitiated, this seemed a supernatural phenomenon and gave rise to legends of ghosts eavesdropping on the conversations of the living. Darkness is another key element of architectural fear. In the pre-electricity era, the interior rooms of castles were illuminated only by candles and torches, creating a whimsical play of shadows. In such conditions, the human imagination transformed ordinary objects into sinister figures, and any air movement that flickered the flame was perceived as the presence of an invisible being. Psychologists note that the perception of confined spaces also has a cultural aspect. In medieval Europe, dungeons and locked rooms were associated with hell and purgatory, which amplified their negative perception. Religious notions that sinners would be imprisoned in the dungeons of hell were transferred to real architecture, imbuing ordinary rooms with mystical significance. Interestingly, the fear of locked doors often became a self-fulfilling prophecy. A room about which sinister rumors circulated eventually indeed became the site of tragic events. For example, in Leeds Castle, a room believed to be cursed by legend later became the site of one owner's suicide, which only solidified its grim reputation. Modern neuroscientists have discovered that certain architectural elements can directly affect the brain's limbic system, responsible for emotions. Low ceilings, lack of windows, asymmetrical shapes. All these characteristics, often found in ancient castles, cause subconscious discomfort and anxiety. Experiments show that even people who do not believe in the supernatural experience inexplicable anxiety in such spaces. The connection between architecture and the formation of legends about supernatural phenomena can be traced in many cultures. When a rational explanation for a room's unusual properties is absent, myths and superstitions come to the rescue. Thus, unusual acoustics become the voices of ghosts, and strange shadows become manifestations of otherworldly forces. These legends are passed down from generation to generation, acquiring new details and gradually becoming an integral part of the castle's history. Architects of the past perfectly understood the psychological impact of their creations and often deliberately amplified it. In some castles, special fear rooms were created, spaces designed solely to intimidate unwelcome visitors. Such rooms might use optical illusions that created the impression of distorted space, or acoustic effects that amplified any sound into a terrifying roar. It is noteworthy that the perception of architectural space varies depending on the cultural context. What evokes fear in one culture may be perceived as sacred or auspicious in another. For example, underground spaces, which in the European tradition are associated with dungeons and hell, are considered places of power and connection with ancestors in some Asian cultures. In the 21st century, the secrets of sealed rooms in European castles began to unfold, thanks to a revolution in research technologies. What had remained hidden for centuries behind thick stone walls is now becoming accessible for study without the need to violate the historical integrity of the monuments. Modern historians have armed themselves with an arsenal of non-invasive methods that allow them to peer behind locked doors without physically opening them. One of the most effective tools has been ground-penetrating radar, GPR, a device that sends radio waves through walls and records their reflection. This technology allowed the discovery of a secret room in Dover Castle, hidden behind a chapel wall, whose existence was not documented in any historical source. Data analysis showed that the room has a regular rectangular shape and was likely used as a storage for church valuables during religious conflicts. Thermography is another method that has revolutionized the study of historical buildings. Thermal imaging cameras record temperature differences in various sections of walls, revealing hidden cavities and bricked-up passages. In Chillon Castle, this technology helped discover a system of ventilation ducts hidden within the thick walls, connecting underwater chambers to the upper floors of the fortress. Three-dimensional laser scanning allows for the creation of incredibly accurate digital models of castles, revealing architectural anomalies invisible during a conventional inspection. In Edinburgh Castle, this technology helped identify several bricked-up doorways whose existence was not reflected in any of the fortress plans. Computer analysis of the three-dimensional model showed that behind one of the walls of the Great Hall, there should be a room of about 30 square meters, access to which was blocked during reconstruction in the 17th century. Acoustic analysis of walls using ultrasound allows for the determination of material density and the identification of hidden cavities. In Pellish Castle, this technology helped discover a system of acoustic tubes built into the walls of the royal apartments. These tubes, operating on the principle of a primitive intercom system, allowed King Carol I to communicate with his advisors while in different parts of the castle. X-ray tomography, originally developed for medical purposes, has also found application in historical research. Portable X-ray units can penetrate walls up to 2 meters thick, creating layered images of their internal structure. In Bran Castle, this technology helped discover a small room hidden within the wall between two main halls. Analysis of the findings showed that this room was used as a secret observation post. One of the most impressive examples of the application of modern technologies was the study of the sealed dungeons of Chambord Castle. Using a combination of GPR and robotic cameras introduced through narrow ventilation openings, scientists were able to create a complete map of the underground part of the castle, including several rooms whose existence was previously unknown. Traces of an alchemical laboratory, remnants of furnaces and glassware, were found in one of the rooms, confirming legends of secret experiments conducted under the patronage of French kings. However, the application of these technologies raises serious ethical questions. Do we have the right to disturb the peace of places intentionally sealed by our ancestors? Some historians and cultural heritage custodians insist that sealed rooms should remain untouched out of respect for the intentions of their creators. Others point to the scientific value of research that can shed light on forgotten pages of history. Particularly sharp discussions arise in cases where sealed rooms might contain human remains. In Lochleven Castle in Scotland, GPR revealed a small chamber beneath the chapel floor, which, according to historical documents, could have been used for burial. Authorities decided not to open this room for ethical reasons, limiting themselves to non-invasive research methods. The question of whether long sealed rooms should be physically opened remains open. On the one hand, such openings can lead to irreversible changes in the microclimate inside the rooms, threatening the preservation of artifacts located there. On the other hand, some secrets can only be revealed through direct access to the contents of sealed spaces. History silently kept its secrets behind stone walls and iron locks. But modern technologies have finally allowed us to peer behind the veil of time. When massive doors, sealed centuries ago, finally open, what do they reveal to our eyes? What discoveries change our understanding of the past? One of the most striking discoveries occurred at Giedelstein Castle in France, when restorers found a small room, bricked up in the 16th century. Behind the thick wall, an untouched library with over 200 books was preserved, many of which were considered lost. Among the finds is a manuscript of an astronomical treatise containing calculations that were half a century ahead of official science. Why was this knowledge hidden? Analysis of the documents showed that the library's owner supported the heliocentric model of the world at a time when such views could lead to the stake of the Inquisition. In the English Tintagel Castle, behind a wall that accidentally collapsed during a thunderstorm in 2012, a room was discovered with a chest full of coins from the time of King Arthur. This find became the first material confirmation of the presence of royal power in this region in the 5th and 6th centuries, which significantly changed our understanding of early medieval British history. Some findings force us to rethink known historical events. In the dungeons of Prague Castle, Czech archaeologists discovered a sealed chamber with an archive of documents relating to the beginning of the 30 Years' War. Among the papers were evidences that the famous Prague defenestration, the throwing of Catholic officials out of a window, which became the casus belli, was a carefully planned provocation and not a spontaneous act of popular anger, as previously thought. In the Italian Sforza Castle, behind a secret door discovered only at the end of the 20th century, an artist's workshop has been preserved untouched, presumably belonging to one of Leonardo da Vinci's students. On the easel stood an unfinished portrait of a woman, strikingly reminiscent of the famous Mona Lisa. Analysis of the pigments showed that the painting was created simultaneously with Leonardo's work, which raised new questions about the process of creating the masterpiece and the possible involvement of students. Of particular interest are findings related to secret societies. In Glamis Castle in Scotland, behind a revolving bookshelf, a small room was discovered with ritual objects belonging to the Order of the Golden Dawn, an occult organization that influenced the political life of Europe in the 19th century. Among the artifacts were lists of order members, including the names of several prime ministers and members of the royal family. Not all discoveries are sensational, but even modest finds can significantly supplement our understanding of the daily life of the past. In Kreuzenstein Castle in Austria, behind a bricked-up door, a perfectly preserved medieval kitchen was found with a complete set of 15th-century dishes and utensils. This, quote, allowed historians to refine their ideas about the culinary traditions and food preparation technologies of that era. Sometimes, the discovery of sealed rooms leads to a re-evaluation of the characters of historical figures. In Amboise Castle in France, researchers discovered a secret laboratory of King Henry IV, where the monarch, known as a harsh warrior, conducted chemical experiments and astronomical observations. The found diaries revealed an unknown side of the king's personality, his passionate interest in science, which he hid from the court, fearing accusations of heresy. Over centuries of European castles' existence, a whole body of legends, passed down from generation to generation, formed around their locked rooms. These stories, populated by ghosts and monsters, became part of the cultural heritage. But how much do they correspond to historical reality? A critical analysis of the most famous legends allows us to separate the grains of truth from the chaff of popular fantasy. One of the most common legends concerns the so-called, quote, chambers where unfaithful wives of aristocrats were allegedly walled up alive. This story, in various variations, is found in many European castles from Scotland to Romania. Archaeological research, however, does not confirm the widespread existence of such rooms. In most cases, the rooms that guides present as, quote, were actually ordinary storerooms or technical spaces, sealed during castle renovations. Nevertheless, some cases do have a historical basis. In Lochleven Castle, a woman's skeleton was indeed found walled into a wall in 2005. Analysis of the remains showed that the woman died in the 16th century and likely belonged to a noble family. This isolated discovery spawned many imitations in the folklore of other regions. Another popular legend tells of treasure rooms, secret vaults where untold riches are hidden, awaiting their time. The historical context of these legends is quite real. During times of war and political upheaval, aristocrats often did hide valuables in secret chambers. However, most of these treasuries were opened in past centuries, either by the owners themselves or by castle invaders. It is interesting to trace how the same architectural elements gave rise to different legends depending on the cultural context. For example, small niches in the walls of castle chapels in Catholic regions were interpreted as repositories for sacred relics, while in Protestant areas, the same niches became, in legends, listening windows through which spy monks overheard confessions. Stories of underground labyrinths connecting castles to the outside world occupy a special place in folklore. Such legends have a real basis. Many fortresses were indeed equipped with secret passages for evacuation in case of a siege. However, popular imagination significantly exaggerated their length. Thus, according to legend, an underground passage from Karlstein Castle stretched for more than 10 kilometers, while archaeological research found a tunnel only about 300 meters long. Some legends were formed as a tool of political propaganda. The story of the torture chamber in Chillon Castle, where a sadistic aristocrat allegedly tortured peasants, appeared only in the 19th century, during a period of growing anti-feudal sentiments. Research showed that the room presented as a torture chamber was actually an ordinary kitchen with a hearth and chimney. Legends related to religious conflicts proved particularly enduring. Stories of secret chapels where Catholics continued to celebrate Mass during Protestant persecutions often have a real basis. A hidden chapel, disguised as a storeroom with a secret altar and niches for candles, was indeed discovered in Hadley Castle. The spread of legends about locked rooms was also facilitated by Gothic literature of the 18th and 19th centuries. The novels of Anne Radcliffe and Horace Walpole, whose plots often took place in gloomy castles with secret rooms, formed certain expectations among readers, which were then projected onto real historical buildings. Many modern legends about castles are actually literary borrowings, adapted to local conditions. Scientific analysis shows that most stories about locked rooms follow certain archetypal patterns characteristic of European folklore. This suggests that many legends arose not as a description of real events, but as an expression of collective fears and fantasies, clothed in the form of specific stories attached to local landmarks. Beyond the known world of secret rooms and sealed doors lies an even more enigmatic territory, chambers that remain inaccessible even to modern technology. These spaces represent the last frontier of historical mysteries, awaiting their moment. What lies hidden behind these walls? What discoveries still await future generations of researchers? In the northern tower of Mont Saint-Michel, that majestic wonder of the Western world, radar has detected a cavity the size of a small hall, located between two known floors. No doors or passages leading to this space have been found. Computer modeling shows that the room is perfectly circular, extremely unusual for medieval architecture. Given that the abbey was a center for astronomical research in the 12th century, researchers suggest that it could have been an observatory, deliberately isolated from the outside world to conduct observations that contradicted the church dogmas of the time. No less intriguing remains the mystery of the sealed cellars of the Alhambra. Beneath the famous Moorish palace in Granada, ground-penetrating radar has revealed a system of rooms that were deliberately flooded during the complex's reconstruction in the 16th century. Spanish authorities still do not grant permission for their drainage, fearing to disrupt the hydrological balance of the entire complex. According to documents from the Reconquista era, these cellars could have housed the library of the last Muslim rulers of Spain, a collection of texts considered lost to modern science. In Eastern Europe, the unexamined system of tunnels beneath Wawel Castle in Krakow presents the greatest interest. Legends speak of an underground city created to protect the Polish crown from numerous invaders. Modern scans confirm the existence of an extensive network of rooms, but their exploration is hindered by unstable groundwater. Historians suggest that these dungeons may contain archives of the Jagiellonian dynasty, believed to have been lost during the Swedish deluge in the 17th century. What significance do these unexplored spaces hold for historical science? Potentially enormous. The history we know is based on the sources available to us, but every new discovery can radically change our understanding of the past. Sealed rooms often contain artifacts and documents preserved in perfect condition due to a stable microclimate and the absence of human intervention. Many historians believe that the most important discoveries are yet to come. Technologies continue to improve, allowing us to see through walls with increasing clarity and detail. What appears today as a blurry spot on a radar screen may tomorrow reveal itself as a room with unique frescoes or a repository of priceless manuscripts. Of particular interest are castles located at the boundaries of cultural worlds. The fortress of Carcassonne in southern France, standing at the crossroads of Catholic and Cathar influence, still holds the secrets of this heretical movement. Recent investigations have revealed several sealed rooms at the base of the main tower, which may contain Cathar texts systematically destroyed by the Inquisition. In an era when it seems that all historical mysteries have been solved, locked rooms remind us how many secrets the past still holds. They make us ponder not only the material treasures that may be hidden behind ancient walls, but also the knowledge, ideas, and stories awaiting their moment to re-enter human culture. Every new discovery not only answers existing questions, but also poses new ones. Perhaps this is where the true value of exploring sealed rooms lies. They remind us that history is not static. It continues to unfold before us, surprising, delighting, and forcing us to re-evaluate established views.